You know that feeling when the first cold breeze arrives and everyone around you starts complaining, but something inside you relaxes a little? Like while other people are counting down to beach trips and sunny vacations, you're secretly excited about sweaters, rainy evenings, and the simple comfort of staying indoors. And sometimes you wonder why. Why do gray skies feel peaceful to you when everyone else seems desperate for sunshine? For years, many people assume that preferring winter simply means you dislike hot weather, but psychologists have been quietly discovering something much more interesting, because your favorite season may be revealing something deeper about the way your mind experiences the world. Here's what makes this fascinating. According to environmental psychology, seasons affect much more than temperature. They shape the emotional atmosphere we live inside, and people respond to those atmospheres very differently. Some people naturally come alive when life becomes brighter, louder, and more energetic. Others feel most comfortable when the world slows down. Neither preference is strange, but because society tends to celebrate summer as the season of happiness, people who genuinely prefer winter sometimes end up questioning themselves without even realizing it. Think about how summer is usually portrayed: endless adventures, social gatherings, traveling, being outdoors, constant activity. There's this unspoken message that says you should be enjoying every second of it, and if you're not excited by all that stimulation, it can almost feel like you're missing something everyone else understands. But psychology paints a much more interesting picture, because what energizes one person can completely exhaust another, and that's where things become surprisingly revealing. Look, personality researchers have known for years that human beings don't all recharge in the same way. Some people gain energy from excitement, movement, and constant interaction. Others recharge through calm, predictability, and quiet moments. Imagine your mind like a battery. Some batteries charge best in bright sunlight. Others charge best in a peaceful room away from distractions. Neither battery is defective, they're simply designed differently. And honestly, I think that's something many people overlook, because when someone says they love winter, others sometimes assume they're sad or lonely. But psychologists have spent decades distinguishing between completely different experiences. There's loneliness, which is the painful feeling that your emotional needs aren't being met. And then there's peaceful solitude, which is something entirely different. You can spend every weekend surrounded by people and still feel disconnected, and you can spend a quiet evening listening to the rain and feel completely content. The difference isn't about how much stimulation surrounds you, it's about whether your environment aligns with what your mind actually needs. Anyway, here's where things become psychologically interesting. Winter naturally removes a lot of invisible pressure. During summer, there's often an expectation to always be doing something, going somewhere, making plans, being productive, having fun, creating memories. And while all those things can be wonderful, they can also become exhausting. Winter, on the other hand, seems to quietly give people permission to slow down. And for certain personalities, that permission feels incredibly comforting, almost like finally putting down something heavy that you've been carrying for a very long time. Here's the part most people overlook. People who love winter often have rich inner worlds, not because they're antisocial or detached from reality, but because their minds naturally spend more time reflecting, imagining, and processing experiences. Researchers studying personality have repeatedly found that people who enjoy calm environments often possess strong self-awareness and emotional independence. They don't necessarily need constant stimulation because their inner lives provide plenty of meaning. And honestly, that's something our culture doesn't talk about nearly enough. Think about how mentally demanding modern life has become. Notifications, social media, conversations, responsibilities, endless information. It's almost like trying to listen to one song while 10 others are playing in the background. Eventually, your mind becomes tired. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as cognitive load, which is simply a fancy way of describing how much mental energy you're using. And when that load becomes too heavy, your mind naturally starts craving recovery, not because something is wrong with you, but because human beings were never designed to process endless stimulation 24 hours a day. And this is where things become really interesting. Maybe people who love winter aren't avoiding life at all. Maybe they're recovering from it. Maybe what feels like peace to them isn't withdrawal. Maybe it's restoration, because when the world becomes quieter, their thoughts finally have room to breathe again, and that changes everything. If these ideas resonate with you, you might enjoy exploring more psychology like this. Subscribing helps this channel reach people who may quietly need to hear that they're not alone in how they experience the world. Something else I found particularly fascinating is that winter symbolizes much more than weather. It represents rest, reflection, stillness. Nature itself slows down. Trees lose their leaves, animals retreat, days become shorter. Everything around us seems to whisper that it's okay to pause for a while. And perhaps that's comforting because beneath all the pressure to constantly improve and achieve, human beings need cycles. We need moments of growth, but we also need moments of rest. Yet modern culture often celebrates endless summer energy. Always active, always productive, always moving. And eventually, some people become exhausted trying to maintain that pace. Now, to where things become even more fascinating. Researchers studying creativity have consistently found that quiet environments often encourage deeper thinking. Without constant distractions, your brain enters a state where it can explore ideas, connect memories, and imagine possibilities more freely. That's one reason why so many writers, artists, and thinkers throughout history have spoken about their love for rainy days and peaceful evenings, not because suffering creates creativity, but because space creates creativity. When your mind isn't busy reacting to everything around you, it finally has enough room to listen to itself. Honestly, I spent a long time wondering why cloudy days made me feel calm while everyone else seemed desperate for sunshine, why cozy evenings felt more exciting than crowded beaches, why the sound of rain somehow felt comforting instead of depressing. And for a while, I thought maybe I was simply wired incorrectly. But the science suggests something much kinder. Maybe different minds simply seek different forms of balance, and perhaps that's perfectly normal. Because here's what psychology keeps revealing when you strip away all the cultural expectations. There is no universal emotional diet. Some people genuinely need excitement and constant social interaction to feel alive. Others need peace, quiet, and slower rhythms to recharge. Neither personality is better, neither lifestyle is healthier. They're simply different. What matters is alignment. Does your life reflect what actually restores you, or are you constantly forcing yourself into experiences that leave you drained because you think that's what you should enjoy? So if you've ever secretly looked forward to cloudy skies while everyone else complained, if you've smiled when temperatures dropped, or if you've always felt strangely comforted by rainy afternoons and quiet evenings, psychology actually has some validating news for you. It may not be a flaw in your personality. It may simply mean your mind feels most at home in a different emotional climate. And honestly, that realization can feel surprisingly freeing, because maybe your love for winter was never really about winter. Maybe it was about peace. Maybe it was about slowing down. Maybe it was about escaping the pressure to constantly perform happiness. Maybe it was about having enough space to hear your own thoughts again. If you've recognized yourself somewhere in these patterns, subscribing to the channel helps more people discover these conversations about psychology and emotional well-being. And if someone in your life has always preferred winter while everyone else counted down to summer, sharing this video might help them understand themselves in a completely different way. Because at the end of the day, the psychology of people who prefer winter over summer isn't really about seasons. It's about understanding that human beings experience comfort differently. The person who loves sunshine isn't winning, and the person who feels peaceful during cold winter evenings isn't losing. We're all simply trying to find the environments that allow us to feel most fully ourselves. Sometimes understanding yourself doesn't require changing who you are. Sometimes it simply requires recognizing patterns that have been quietly present all along. And once you begin seeing those patterns, you start noticing them everywhere. And perhaps little by little, you stop asking why you're different, and instead, you begin wondering whether you've simply been listening to a different rhythm all along. And somehow, that realization feels a little like winter itself. Quiet, gentle, and strangely comforting.